Technology, man.
Jake Johnson, you had a great first season of New Girl, but this second season, they gave you even more storylines and screen time. What did you think about that extra stuff that you got to do here with the second season on New Girl?
To be totally honest, I was really happy. I loved being on New Girl season one because I loved, having a part that I could kind of sink my teeth into and figuring out how TV kind of works, because it's a very different experience as an actor doing TV as opposed to the movies I've done. Because a movie, you basically what's going to happen from beginning, middle to end, and you have 2 months to do it. And so season one was interesting, but I did find at times that I didn't know who Nick Miller was, and it was something that I talked to Liz Merriweather a lot about, and she always had a much better grasp of who he was than I did, and she still does. And then when I came back from the summer into season two, we shot 1 and 2 together. We block shot it. And the episode 2 with Nick and the old man from the future, as I was reading that on page, I was like, Liz, I love this. And she's like, yeah, we thought you would. Josh Malmuth, one of our writers, came up with it, and we were kind of honing in on who Nick could be. And I felt like season 2, from the very beginning, they had him honed in, and it was just a lot of fun to play him this year.
One of the big things about season 2, your character and Zoe's character, Jess, flirted in season 1, but you really got together here in season 2. What did you think about that development?
I loved it. I think Zoe is one of our best actors, in TV and in films. And I think that she kind of raises the bar of our show since the very beginning. And I love doing scenes with her because she brings, she makes you kind of work hard and do good work. And I think that Nick and Jess, from the beginning, that there was a spark. And I think if you don't, blow a little bit of wind and put oxygen on that spark and throw wood around it, it could burn out. And so I'm glad that we didn't wait and wait and wait, using this as like a bullet in the back of the chamber. We just kind of let that fire burn.
Well, all of you, it's just a great ensemble that you've got there. Talk about just working together as an ensemble, especially I love the scenes where you're all together in one room.
It really is. It's a great group. Max Greenfield, obviously, as Schmidt, is, hilarious and just a true nut. He keeps me laughing most of the day. And Lamore Morris, I believe, is our most undercredited player on the team. I think he has done such a good job with that character. And, coming in, Damon Wayans Jr., who played Coach, obviously, in the pilot, coming in as Winston, as a different character, is a very hard job to do. Because a lot of people saw that pilot, and that was the group they saw. And so that's what they imagined New Girl to be. And so Lamorne came in with an uphill battle, and his character has been kind of all over the place in terms of how it's written, in terms of finding him. They make him do some things that will be really broad, and then he'll have to be really grounded. And each week he kind of comes in there and he kind of kills it. He does his job. So yeah, we got a great group.
Well, you've been singled out this year, even more so. You got a Critics' Choice Award nomination a couple of weeks ago. Those awards were held. TCA Awards coming up, and that's probably the single hardest group to get in, I think, of all awards, because they only nominate 5 people in comedy. Yeah. They could be lead people, they could be supporting people, it could be men, it could be women, and they picked you as one of those 5. What did you think about that?
I'll tell you, I'm blown away, and I'm really honored. It's when I saw that list with Louis C.K. and Lena Dunham and everybody, I was like, this is a great list. I'm happy to be. I'm happy to lose to those people. But it's a real honor, and I think it says a lot, to be honest, about our writers of our show, because I think that our writing doesn't get the credit that it sometimes deserves, in my opinion, in that, in TV especially, they write characters to shine. And so they wrote me such great stuff, so all these awards, I really feel as if anything I'm nominated for is shared between Liz and myself and all the writers.
Well, a lot of people on our website think you're going to be nominated for an Emmy Award here in a few weeks, and you've decided this season, because of the extra screen time and so forth, you're going to give it a shot in lead actor this time. What went into that decision?
To be perfectly honest, it was, the Emmys are such a crazy mountain that I would have never even imagined attempting to get nominated for. And then, last year with Max getting nominated, Max and I hang out in my trailer a lot. We call it the think tank. We're not the smartest guys in the world, but we like to think a lot and we like to strategize a lot. And he was the guy who first planted the seed, and he said, you should go, I didn't really have a publicist last year, and he said that you should really go after the Emmys this year. He's like, you're doing good stuff, and they're writing you well. And then he's the one that said, you should consider lead because of the Nick and Jess story. And he said, she's obviously the new girl, and it will always be that, but you're never infringing on that territory because you're a male. So she could be the female, you can be the male, and we could be supportive. And it didn't mentally sit right at first. And then the more I thought about it, I thought it was just an interesting way of looking at the TV show. And then as I would read the scripts, as they were pushing Nick and Jess, it just seemed like a logical attempt. And really, just for the fun of trying, we tried, and we're getting a pretty good response. So it's really exciting.
He was just trying to get you out of his category is what he was doing.
Well, that sneaky SOB is good.
It actually is a smart strategy because, if both of you are getting attention, it might split the votes if voters don't know which one of you to vote for, say, in supporting. So by you moving into lead, that's probably a good strategy.
It's pretty smart. He's a dear friend, and then I brought it up, obviously, with my publicist at ID, and everyone talked about it, and we said, if I do get the nomination, it would be a huge honor, and if not, everything that I've been nominated for, it's been a huge win. And to be really cheesy about it for a second, the real win is that people are watching our show and they like it. And the fact that we get to come back and do season 3 is remarkable. When you audition for these pilots, that's just kind of all it is. It's a 5-day job. And so the fact that we are entering season 3 of a TV show and I get to see what the writers come up with for Nick in a whole nother year, it's really exciting. And especially as I'm doing this movie in Atlanta right now, and I really can't wait to get back to New Girl. And I never thought that was going to happen, but I want to finish all those stories and see what happens with another year of it.
I would imagine some actors feel locked into, a 5-year or 7-year contract, a long series, and others see the potential of exploring those storylines over time.
I'm starting to see it more like TV, like a novel, in that, you do a movie and it's from the beginning, middle, the end, and it's over. But you do TV and it just keeps expanding and expanding, and the world gets richer and richer and richer. And I think it depends on the writing of the show. I think we have a special group because the way Liz does it is she treats it like it's a cable show, in that she doesn't have some formula she just plugs in and we're trying to get to 100 to get to those syndication numbers. Every episode she cares about as if we're doing 12 a year. As in, each episode she puts her stamp on. And so I would like to see what happens if we got to 80 or 90 of these and, where that story is going to go. And the other thing about TV, and this is just a practical answer, the more tax incentives are going to other states, the less actors get to stay in their homes in LA. And it's something that I've really learned to appreciate with New Girl is I get to be at home. And so as an acting job from August until April to be in the wonderful city of Los Angeles, that's pretty great.
Oh, you've got it made, that's for sure.
I got it made over there, man. And being down here in Atlanta with this heat and the bugs we were talking about, take me home to California, New Girl.
Get back to Southern Cal. I want to read you some questions in the forums, in the chat room, and also we want to talk about Emmy episode ideas in a moment. One of them in our forums, Optimist, wants to know, is it true that the Tran character was your idea? And he says it's one of my favorite parts of the second season. How long did it take to film those scenes?
Thank you, man. It was. It wasn't. Here's the reality of it. I text Liz Merriweather ideas all the time. I've texted her, 4 in the last couple of days, and most of them are garbage. And most of them she just throws away. And I wanted to do season 1 because Nick was so grumpy. I had an idea that Nick is really mad at the roommates and he leaves, and there's this old Asian guy in the building who they meet and they sit on a park bench, and Nick just talks at him the whole time and slowly learns to, open up by the looks on this guy's face. And I wanted him to become one of Nick's best friends so that, Tran is hanging out in the loft and, Schmidt can't wrap his brain around this friendship and he gets very jealous, but Tran never talks. And then it was the writers who added the water massage, which I think was a brilliant choice. So, yes, it was my idea, but in truth, it was a collaboration. And all that stuff with Tran, we shoot all the little monologues I do. we'll shoot that in like a couple hours, and then the water stuff took a few hours too. So we did it all in a day.
St. Joseph Girl says, give us the details behind the Big Kiss episode.
The Big Kiss episode was directed by a guy named Max Winkler, and when we did the table read for that, the kiss wasn't in it. It was, we're back in that room, we're going to kiss, and then they chicken out and they don't. And at the last minute on Wednesday, Liz Merriweather pulled Zoe and I aside and said that, no, I'm sorry, it was Thursday. She said, tomorrow, the last thing we're going to shoot before the holiday break, this was right before the December break, we're going to have you guys kiss. And so we're like, all right. And so we're there, and Liz pulled me aside before and said, just don't kiss her soft. Kiss her like a man. And I was like, I don't need notes on how to kiss a woman, Liz. And we had a laugh, and then we shot it probably 6 or 7 times. And yeah, it felt, it'd been a long time coming for Nick and Jess. And Liz was very happy, so we were all pretty happy.
Jamie W. says, Jake, would you ever want Nick to go back to law school? Do you think that's a place the character will go in the future?
No. I don't want. That's a good question. It's something we've talked about. I think that Nick went to law school because if you look in the Chicago episode, next to his family, the Nick Krolls and the Bill Burrs, that Nick was the smartest of that bunch. But next to the rest of the world, all the other lawyers, Nick's the dumbest of that bunch. So I think there's a place for Nick in a professional world, but I think the only time Nick should be a lawyer is if he's representing himself or the gang in the court of law, and but I don't think he should go back to law school.
Well, speaking of going back to Chicago, earlier in the season we met your father, Dennis Farina. What was it like working with him?
It was truly a dream come true. I'm from Chicago myself, so Dennis Farina is a true Chicago hero. He was a detective in that city for 20 years, and he is such a good actor, and I really believe an underrated actor, even though he's so, held in such high esteem. He's incredible. He was good. He was solid. He was fun. He went along with it. And I think he added so much to the season and to Nick. And, he's dead right now. His character's dead. But I hope they do a spin on that, either with flashbacks or that Walt was hustling everybody, because I don't want to be done with Dennis Farina. He is so incredible to work with, and he's one of the rare actors. He comes in. We did that flashback episode where Walt and Nick sit on the bed and talk, and Walt gives them some advice. And in the rehearsal, every member of the crew is standing around camera watching like it's a play, and they're not watching me. They're with me every day. So the fact that he's got that kind of energy and that kind of power that on week 20. Our sound department wants to watch him act. That adds something to a show, and it adds something to the actors and the moments, and, I hope we keep using him.
We had Johnny Galecki on last week, and he said something similar about Bob Newhart, who they had on as a guest star this year. I asked, what did he learn from him? And he talked about, the timing and, things like that. But he said the biggest thing he learned was that a man at that stage of his career could be so excited and energetic about being still acting.
That's really cool. Yeah, there are certain these guys, and I don't want to say the word legend because I don't know if that's the right way of putting it, but there's something about these actors who have been doing this for years and years. When they come on and you get to act with them, I've had the same experience with Rob Reiner. Sitting next to Rob Reiner doing a scene, you just absorb things, and it helps. It makes you better. It makes you value what you're doing. It makes you, appreciate it. It makes you play at your, at the peak of your intelligence, and it's exciting. It's really nice.
The other, your other parent, Margot Martindale, we find out when you go to Chicago. We're interviewing her tomorrow, by the way.
I love her.
What was she like to work with?
She was awesome. Are you interviewing her yourself?
Yeah, I'm interviewing her tomorrow. We interviewed her a couple of years ago before she won for Justified, so I guess we're now her good luck charm.
Yeah, well, thank her, because this is what, in my opinion, what makes her. I mean, look, she's so good on camera, but what Margot Martindale did that really taught me a lesson was, so when I'm doing the eulogy in the Chicago episode, the way you shoot TV is you shoot for 12 to 14 hours a day. And what happens is when you first start a day, off camera, everybody's really enthusiastic. So if I'm doing a scene with Max Greenfield, let's say, and he's doing a little speech, and Nick is off camera. Well, at the beginning of the day, I'm listening and saying my lines, but at the end of the day, I'm clowning around and trying to screw him up. Now, it's not cool that we do that, but it's just the reality of our set, that like you try to make them screw up their lines so that they have like a little like blunder and everybody gets to laugh. So we've gotten so used to that that you can kind of tune out the weirdness. And if Lamorne's clowning around off camera, it just brings a little bit of like, makes me want to laugh, but I have to fight through. So I'm doing the eulogy, and Margot Martindale, the looks of her character inspired my character so much that, you know, while we're doing the 15th take of it, each time she would transform from, you know, herself to her character off camera in such a way, and it happened so fast that I couldn't help but, you know, respond to that. And there was really moments when I was watching it where I realized, like, oh, she's a great actor. Like, that is what great actors do. She's one of those, like, you know, Rob Reiner and Dennis Farina, that I'm really happy that she's got her own show, but selfishly I'm really mad about it. Because I know the writers love her and we love her, and she would be back a lot more, and I want her back because she's good.
Yeah, we interviewed her other son, Will Arnett, a couple of weeks ago. You've got some competition now as her son.
It's hard because Will Arnett's so good. I hate it. I don't want to. I don't want to compete with Will Arnett. I want to compete with like some no-name kid out of Cincinnati. You know, like some guy who it's his first job. I'll be like, well, I'll kill him. But Will Arnett is, you know, one of the best.
Here's a question from Rebecca. I think it's a good one. If you had to live with either Nick, Jess, Winston, or Schmidt, who would you choose and why?
As me? As Jake?
Yeah, as Jake has to live with one of those four people. Not the actors, but the characters.
Okay. If I had to live with one of them, it would not be Schmidt. You know, I'd probably live with Winston. Winston's got a job at the radio station. He seems to be the most grown up of the bunch. I'd live with Winston.
Okay. We've talked some about some of the episodes you've had this year, and if you do get nominated for an Emmy, you'll have to choose one from this past season. I put this question in the forums yesterday just to see what response I would get,
right.
And you're very, very lucky in that I think I had about 8 different recommendations. So you've got a lot to choose from, as you well know. You had some great material. Does one episode stand out to you more than another in terms of what they gave you to work with for Nick?
You know, they really gave me a lot. It was I had this question before, and I really don't know, to be honest, because, you know, I love the trans stuff, but that feels very it's I don't know. That's because that's my wheelhouse. That's what I think is. I love that actor Raymond. I think his face sells all those scenes. I think the Chicago episode that they gave me all that emotional stuff. You know, I was really honored to be able to do all that stuff. But the Kiss episode, I think, you know, when Nick and Jess finally kiss, because I think the heart of Nick's story is with Nick and Jess. You know, I think that's the reason that I'm getting this attention and that things are happening more for my character, and it's because, you know, Jess is the lead of the show, and so if you start going after the lead and you guys are together, then that means something. So I don't know. It would probably either be the Kiss episode, the Chicago episode, or the Tran episode for me.
All of those were recommended. I think the overwhelming majority, and I would tend to agree. After I went back and watched some of these last night, just to make sure. I think the Tran episode. I think that one.
Really?
Well, in the comedy categories, especially for men, lead and supporting. If you just look back, who has won over the past few years? Let's look at lead, since that's where you are. When you look at Jim Parsons, Alec Baldwin, Ricky Gervais. It's laugh out loud funny moments. The emotional stuff, they like that as a range, the voters do, but they don't nearly respond to it as a voter would, as much as the laugh out loud kind of moments.
So how does it work? If you get nominated, then you submit an episode?
Yeah, you'll have about, I think, a week to 10 days to turn in an episode at that point.
Okay.
You tell your production team, and they'll send it to the Academy.
Well, look, because if I'm lucky enough and I get submitted, I might do the Tran one then.
Yeah, that's the majority of the people in our forums. Yeah. They loved Chicago as an episode, but it might be a little too emotional. It doesn't have the laugh out loud moments like I think the other one did.
I'll listen to the people on Gold Derby.
Well, it's our fault if you lose then.
Yeah, I mean, that's 100% right. First of all, if I get nominated, I'm psyched. And then if I lose, I blame you, Golden Derby.
Well, that's going to be some stiff competition no matter what, because you still got Alec and Jim and John Cryer who won last year,
But the reality of it is, the dream would be to be nominated. I'm not thinking about winning that Emmy.
well, it could happen, and the show could get in for comedy series. What would you feel about that in terms of recognition for the show in that high regard?
I think it'd be awesome. I hope it does. I hope that, truthfully, I hope that Liz Merriweather gets a little shout out. And I think that that would kind of be the shout out to her. Either, I don't quite know what would be it for her, either the show or writing, but she really works her ass off and she's super talented. And she's really the engine behind it. So it does feel like, I would like her to, be able to toast herself and take a breath and say, wow, I guess I have done really good stuff.
I was surprised when the ensemble didn't get recognized at the SAG Awards. I thought that would have been a perfect place to recognize all of you.
Yeah, that would have been really cool.
Here's some more questions in the chat room if you've got a few more minutes.
I do. I'm in no rush. I'm off today.
Oh, good, good. We'll spend the next few hours.
It's good. I'm so bored in the hotel. I'd rather just sit around and watch TV.
Well, speaking of visiting somewhere, Ashley J wants to know, what's your favorite thing to do when visiting your hometown of Chicago?
When I go back to Chicago, I love to see, my family, obviously. My brother's got 2 kids, Luke and Emma, and I haven't met the little girl yet. She was born about 4.5 to 5 months ago, and I've been slammed. So when I go back, that's the first thing I do. My mother comes up from Wisconsin, so I get to see her. If it's the summer, I love to go to a Cubs game, or I love to go near Wrigley. Because just around that atmosphere really reminds me of growing up in high school and all that fun stuff. And I love to eat, disgusting foods that make me look terrible with my shirt off.
Okay. People, once we started talking about episodes, several piped in and said they like Cooler a lot.
Oh yeah, the Cooler one was a fun one. That was early on. Yeah, it's I always they do something with Zoe and I which makes it really fun when we shoot our 2-person episodes, and it's called cross coverage. And what that means is they shoot my coverage and her coverage at the same time. So if we're in a restaurant, they'll have one camera facing her and one camera facing me. And the advantage of that for for us, and I think for the characters, is that we're both always on camera. So if she says her line and she screws something up about it, and I stay in character and react, and she reacts to that, that can then make it in the show. Those moments of like imperfections and improvs that I think really color the characters. And that's when we did the Cooler. We did a bunch of that together. Steve
wants to know, is Nick a hard character to get into? What do you think? What goes through your mind when you have to become Nick?
Is Nick a hard character to get into? I don't think so. He was really hard for me season 1. I think the way I get into him is, I think Nick is always a little angry. Larry Charles, the great director, said something really interesting to me. He came in and did the Katie episode, episode 2 of season 2. And he said that he enjoyed my character season 1. He's like, you're the grumpy guy. You've allowed a bunch of people who wouldn't watch the show to watch it through your character's eyes. They got to experience all these other characters. And then he said, but because you've been guarded and because you've been tough, he goes, season 1 was about guarded. Season 2, you've got to show that the grumpy guys are deep down the most sensitive, and that's why they've gotten so guarded. So he goes, your job now is to show why Nick is so grumpy. And I thought that was a really interesting thing. And so I thought about that almost daily, to be honest, about getting into Nick. Of yes, he's pissed, and he's annoyed, and he's an old man in a young man's body. But I tried season 2 to show that it's because he's overly sensitive, and the reason he put that like shell up is because he didn't want to get hurt.
What does Larry Charles know? He only has Seinfeld and Curb Your Enthusiasm and Borat, and he doesn't know anything about comedy, right?
He's only a damn genius. What does he know?
Annika wants to know, she says, Nick does a lot of embarrassing, it just disappeared on me. Nick does a lot of embarrassing stuff. Do you ever get self-conscious when shooting, for example, the Nick Schmidt lap dance?
Yeah, absolutely. Whenever I have to dance, I get self-conscious because I'm a very bad dancer. I don't like having to take my shirt off. That was really hard because we had to do the lap dances in front of the beautiful Olivia Munn, and I was in the middle of a storyline trying to act as if it made sense that she and I were a couple. So you're trying to be like the cool dude, so that Olivia Munn could be like, I could see Angie liking this guy. And then Max starts shaking his butt in my face, and I don't want to laugh, but it was a whole thing. And when Angie gives Nick a lap dance, Max and I were just being little boys about it. So it was, yes, there's a lot of very embarrassing stuff that happens on that show. But I think that's part of Liz's sense of humor. She likes to put us all in situations that are really embarrassing for us as people, and then watch how it affects the characters.
Farron Tang, and this will be the last question we do from the chat room, wants to know if at some point in the future of the series, do you think Nick and Jess will be married?
Man, I really have no idea.
Would you like to see that happen? Not right away, but at some point down the road.
I don't know. I would like to see. I know that I think I would like to see them explore their relationship, and I'd like to see them push it forward. But I don't know. I think that they got a first date, and then they probably have to break up, and then one of them's going to screw it up, and then there's going to be other people, and then they got to try getting back together. So in terms of getting married in the end, I think it's too early to tell.
You mentioned your movie that you're shooting right now in Atlanta, Let's Be Cops. Tell us about that.
Well, I'll show you something about that. That is a bullet from a gun. And the reason I show that to you is because it's a cop movie, and they made me go to a shooting range and shoot this stuff. It's been crazy. It's been insane. But Damon Wayans Jr. is in it. It's Damon Wayans Jr. and myself, Rob Riggle, James Darcy. It's a really good group. Yeah, it's a fun movie. It's about a couple of guys who go to a masquerade party thinking it's a costume party, and they dress up like cops. And then when they leave the party, people on the street think they're cops, so they start dressing up like cops.
What's the timeline for that release? When will that be out?
I believe spring of next year.
Okay, so about a little less than a year from now. And then you've got two, I guess, already shot, The Pretty One and Townies?
No, Drinking Buddies. I shot Townies this summer. I just did a bit in it with.
Oh, okay, gotcha.
By the way, I just saw This Is the End, and it was one of the funniest movies I've seen in a long time. My buddy Rob Riggle and I was doing this movie, went and saw it, and we were laughing so hard at the theater that it got embarrassing. But Townies, that'll be fun. Nick Stoller directed it, who I did Get Into the Greek with. I just play a little character who comes in and throws up a lot, so that was a lot of fun. But I got a movie coming out in July. I think it's in theaters in August. It's a little one, but I hope everybody sees it. It's called Drinking Buddies, and they just released the trailer today. And I love the movie. I think it's really good. It's directed by Joe Swanberg, who I think is an absolutely brilliant director. And it was one of the most fun projects I ever made. And I think you feel the fun of it because it was an improvised movie. And yeah, it's one of those little ones, but I hope people like a safety not guaranteed. I hope it has some wings to it.
Well, you've got all these movies going now. You're the star on New Girl, moving up to lead actor this year. Take us back to like 2.5 years ago when you auditioned for this show. What was your life like then compared to what it's like now?
Well, I was broke. I was struggling for work. I was considering if this game was ever going to work. But, I love acting. I really do. There's a lot of things about being an actor that it's not what I expected, and it's not stuff I like. I think celebrity's very overrated and kind of a drag. But I think acting is, and the caliber of people that I get to act with, and the amount of people who get to see this stuff, and Twitter's a great example of like people reaching out and telling what they like and what they want to see. It's, a dream come true. And it's an incredible experience to be able to, the Dennis Farinas, the Rob Reiners, Zoe Deschanel, Damon Wayans on this, Riggle. Like, it's awesome. And I truly want to become a better actor, and I want to, work hard and do good stuff. And going back to the pilot of New Girl, it's incredible that this is happening in 2 years, and I'm very, very lucky.
We hope you have a great summer, and about mid-July, we're hoping to see your name on that Emmy nominations list. We think you deserve it off a great season, and just hope to see that happen.
Thank you so much. That's awfully nice of you, and thanks for taking the time today.